And this is the third week of May here in 2022. We're going to do a mid to late spring hike here. And the weather could feel like summer today. It's supposed to get in the low 90s, even though we've had a cool, cloudy spell lately. Mother Nature's going to flip the switch today on us. So I planned a hike that would be near flowing and water and some ponds here at the Nipmuc State Forest, right on the Connecticut-Massachusetts border in northeast Connecticut. There's some ridges with some interesting rock formations here at the Bigelow Hollow State Park in the adjoining Nipmuc State Forest. Dozens of miles of trails and old gravel roads and old Jeep roads that go to several interesting points of view along these water courses and ponds and ridges. This is Bigelow Pond itself right here at Bigelow Hollow State Park. We're going to start the adventure here and head up towards what's called Cat Rocks and Breakneck Pond. At the minimum, it's going to be 7 miles. We're going to try to do more than that. We got about 8 hours to do this hike today. It's nice and cool right now. The forecast looks hot, but with water nearby and deep shade from the recent leaf out, we should be able to keep the temperature down while we're hiking and cool off as needed. And boy, what a still morning to start this adventure. And the warm, humid air, you can feel it coming in right now, and plenty of places to cool off along the way today. I'm going to start with some ridge hiking to the northwest of Breakneck Pond, and then follow the area close to the pond. The trails run right next to the pond on the way back. And there's some more ridge hiking that can be done as well on the way back. So just admire this Bigelow Pond. Look how still this water is. Look at that perfect reflection of these pine trees. And you know, southern Connecticut and some of the trap rock ridges are full of oaks and hickories, and this has more of a northwoods feel here from what I can see. I'm seeing a lot of white pine and hemlock and some more trees that you would see in central and northern New England. We'll look at those. We'll look at some wildflowers as we find them, and anything else that comes along, including the rock formations, which can be quite striking. I was here many years ago for a few hours. Didn't do that many miles. It was early winter, just a short half-day hike. We're going to try to do much more than that today. Let's look at this pond for just a minute longer. We'll look at the map, and then we'll get the feet moving here. I believe this does have a dam at the southwest end of it, but Breakneck Pond itself, which is up the trail a couple miles, is natural and quite shallow, but also, you know, the way it's always been, with no man-made influences on the pond. So let's just take a look at the trail map here. Got the one that the park provides. Got a topo map that I've modified for this hike as well. I'm going to use the topo map because honestly it's a little easier to read. We're at the P at the northeast end of Bigelow Pond right now. And at this point there's trails that go in many directions. I'm going to try the blue and orange trail, which is called the Ridge Trail, and it goes several miles on top of these topo lines. You can see it's following these ridges all the way up into Worcester County, Massachusetts, right on the state border, and it zigzags across the border several times to an area called Cat Rocks. And then there's trails on both sides of Breakneck Pond, including the Nipmuc Trail itself, which is in blue. There's a white trail, which I've got a W there indicating the white blazes. And these dark dotted lines are old dirt roads that are showing up on the map. I don't know if they're in good condition or if they're all rutted out. We'll see what we find along the way. The state park map shows these trails as well. It's a little blurry and hard to read, but it does have the distances on there as well, so that's helpful. And I can also get this on the computer as needed if we need a better view of the map. I'm going to chart my course as we go today, and we'll see what kind of adventure can be found back here at the Bigelow Hollow State Park and the Nipmuc State Forest in Union, Connecticut. And the blue and orange trail goes through this beautiful hemlock and pine grove to start. I'm going to stop and look at some wildflowers in a few minutes here. This is a sensory experience with all the greenery. There's nothing more green than leaves that just came out within a few days of your arrival. They're so green when they first bud out. It makes for great photos and just a great sensory experience. Had a little bit of rain last night, which brings the smells of these pine needles out. And pretty pristine back here, and we haven't gone very far yet. We are going to get up on some ridges. I think we'll lose a lot of these hemlocks and probably some of the pines and trade that for some hardwood species. We'll see what comes along as it comes along on the ridge trail here. And in the deep shade underneath these pines and hemlocks, we've got a plant that's more common to our north, but you do find it in Connecticut, but not everywhere. This is our gold thread, our golden thread. And it is evergreen, but what we're seeing here is the new growth in bright green, and then underneath it, again, it looks like a clover almost, is that darker green. So golden thread. I don't want to disturb this too much, but if you just gently pull away the pine needles here, you can see the reason for the name. And just underneath the surface are the golden roots of this gold thread, which scatters all over the place. So it's, you know, many different leaves off the same colony of plants. So they're all attached from beneath with these gold thread roots. But that's not visible from the surface, but you don't have to dig too far and carefully to find the gold thread from which it's named. This provides color even in the wintertime when other things have turned brown and gray. We've got plenty of starflower growing in these woods as well. Let's just take a look at one of these. Right here with 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like 7 or 8 points on the star. This one has 8. I think the one I saw a few minutes ago had 7. And 1, 2, 3, 4 looks like 8 little leaflets that form a star shape as well. Some of these star flowers have 1 flower and some have 2. We'll see what we can find here. And the display of green continues along the ridge trail here, and we're still in the valley. We haven't gone up the ridge yet. But we are starting to get some bedrock here, which composes these ridges. Just look how green the moss is on this interesting shaped bedrock here. This is mostly gneisses and schists around here, so it's basically sedimentary rock that still resembles sedimentary rock as far as the layers go, but it was warmed up enough deep within the Earth's crust that the crystals have changed from their original form, and it's easier to make out the minerals because of that. So it's no longer called sandstone, shale, or limestone, but it would be mostly gneiss and schist. I don't believe there's any marble around here, so probably originated as shales and sandstones and siltstones and got warmed up enough to form these layers of schist and gneiss. And possibly even some igneous rocks poking through in places. We'll see what's here. This looks like a sedimentary rock that got warmed up. But just look at how green this is. Amazing this time of year. And the new growth on that mountain laurel in the last clip there is in pretty good contrast to the last year's leaves, which are evergreen and much darker. Well, this ridge trail goes up several different ridges. The first ridge is only about 150 feet higher than Breakneck Pond, and a lot of pine up here. Some hardwoods, but still a lot of pine and hemlock up here, and some beautiful rocks, and moderate hiking, nothing real difficult. So this is what we're seeing in the first mile and a half of this hike. We're going to drop down in this little valley between this ridge and the one to our northwest, and that one's a couple hundred feet higher than this one. And I'm just amazed by the greenery today. You know, I knew this would be an interesting place to go hiking any time of year. I sure am glad I came today. Plenty of shade to keep us cool, several bodies of water to keep us cool, and amazing display of greenery the third week of May. In that last clip without commentary, showed the handsome foliage and flowers of a striped maple. Let's take a closer look at one that's down lower to the ground where we can really see it. Those are dainty little bell-shaped flowers almost. Don't really look a lot like the red maple or sugar maple flowers that I've ever seen. Unlike the red maple, which comes into flower before the leaves come out, this is already fully leafed out at this point, and these leaves are quite large on this striped maple, at least as big as my hand, sometimes even larger than that. But this is a visitor from the north. It's much more common as you go north. It's common in the central Appalachians as well, to the point where actually that's the botanical name, Acer pennsylvanicum. But in New England, it's definitely more common away from the coast and inland, and the type of forest you would find in central and northern New England at the low and mid elevations in Vermont. There's that flower right there. So we've got 3 maples on this hike so far. Sugar and red maple are common on almost every hike you do. Another visitor from the north we could find here, I've seen it in Massachusetts recently, is the mountain maple. We'll keep an eye out for it where we're on the rocky areas where it can get a little bit more sun. It tends to grow in areas with partial to full sun. But our striped maple doesn't need full sun. It grows happily under the shade of these birch trees and oak trees and the mixed conifer forest here. And about 3 miles into the hike on the blue and orange ridge trail here at the Bigelow Hollow State Park and Nipmuc State Forest here. We're on the third ridge. There's some good outcrops there, but no view in the summer here or during the leaf season. But there would be some partial views during the winter months, even just a few weeks ago, looking to the east. But here's a view I wasn't surprised to find in May here, late May. This is always an indication of acid soils. Its cousin, the yellow lady slipper, can grow in the limestone soils. I found it in the cave country of Kentucky, not in the caves, but near the caves, made of limestone. This is our pink lady slipper. Just starting to come open. It's in partial shade here, a little shy here, not quite as well lit as I'd like, but Often found on these ridge tops in the dry acid soils under oak trees, under a hemlock here. They do need some sun to really get established, so usually there's breaks in the forest canopy when you start finding pink yellow lady's slipper. And when you get in a ridge top like this, because of the wind throw, they're offering R breaks in the canopy. And that's where you usually find it. Sometimes you'll find quite a few in one small area. Let's continue on. We're almost on the state border here. We'll be darting in and out of Massachusetts as we approach the area around Cat Rocks. And right on cue, just a few hundred feet from that first pink lady slipper, we've got several more here. Again, they're just starting to get going. They've got a good display for a couple weeks, and then the flower fades away. The foliage on these pink lady slippers is got obvious creases in it, and you will often find the foliage without the flower. It takes many wildflowers several years to get enough energy reserved in their root system to send up a flower and reproduce. Got several more right up here. Again, thin rocky soil underneath pines, underneath these oaks. Highly acid soil. These guys are right at home here. Often they're in more open areas than this. This area may have been more open at one time, and has since the canopy has closed in a little bit, which could limit the life of these lady slippers. They do like the sun. You never find them in really deep shade under dense hemlock or white pine forests. But boy, that sure is pretty, and I would expect to find more on this hike. Another pink flower that I haven't seen yet on this hike, but we'll be keeping our eyes open because it is starting to bloom, and that's the pink azalea. We'll keep our eyes open for that. And again, it likes partial sun as well, or full sun if it can be had. But this ridge is beautiful. This is what they call a hogback in geology. These, what used to be sedimentary rocks, have been folded and tipped on an angle. And even though they're no longer considered sedimentary, they still resemble hogbacks found in sedimentary rocks, which are common in many parts of the country, including the folded Appalachians of central Pennsylvania, parts of Virginia and West Virginia. And no surprise that we've got some sun-loving reptiles out today. I avoid areas with poisonous snakes this time of year because of that reason. They all come out at the same time and need to make a living and find something to eat, and they're all basking. And this is a harmless garter snake here who won't do anything except slither away. I've already seen two of them in the last few minutes right near where I saw those pink lady slippers, and this guy's pretty well camouflaged. Let's see if we can get him zoomed in a little better. He's got the stripes. There he is. So no harm in these guys. They're not aggressive. They don't coil up like other snakes. They tend to just kind of hang out in the sun. I've seen them on cold days. I've seen them on days in the 40s. They don't seem to mind the cooler weather in the early spring. I've seen them in December on warmer days. So unlike the copperheads and the black rat snakes and the timber rattlers that go deep underground during the colder months, these guys seem to be they come out for less. They come out more often, I'll put it that way. Obviously you have to get below frost line when it gets really cold, but looking for a toad, looking for maybe a small salamander, and they're part of nature's balance. And again, I would not be hiking in an area with lots of rocks this time of year if I knew there was a large population of poisonous snakes, because they are out. This is when they need to start their whole life cycle. Basically goes from May till September, and that's when they have to do all their hunting, their mating, and fatten up for the winter time. So use extra caution on ridges like this if you are in an area where those snakes are found. As far as I know, they're not found in this area within 30 or 40 miles of this area. So we'll assume that's the case. If we see one, that would be even more of a surprise. And as you make your way down off that hogback ridge where we saw the garter snake and the pink lady slipper, you get into some boulder gardens. We're not officially at Cat Rocks yet. I've never been to Cat Rocks. I don't know how it compares with what we just went through, but I'm going to point out some more boulders as we go here. There's some behind these trees here that are the size of a house. So as the rocks break off that hogback ridge, they fall down into this valley here, which has got a appears to be a natural wetland. Could be some beaver activity going on here. It looks like there could have been, since there's a lot of drowned out trees behind us here. Let's just take a look at some of these boulders. They're quite impressive. And I'll tell you what, there's plenty of hemlock and pine on this hike. I never felt that hot, except where those lady slippers were, where we're getting more sun. And even there, it didn't feel that hot. But it is a warm day, and these little depressions where there's water is a good place to dunk your hat in and cool off. And these areas between these boulders feel a lot cooler. And some massive trees back here that probably never got considered for you know, logging. It's very difficult to log these boulder fields. Usually they aren't logged, so you can often find some pretty large trees growing in these areas with lots of rock. But boy, it's a lot cooler down between these giant boulders here. This one on my right is about 20 feet high, and we'll just keep exploring this whole area. And we've wound our way from that boulder garden around the south side of this beaver pond. And yes, there's evidence of beavers. It's not recent. This is a few years old. Chewed right through this, looks like a yellow birch here. And raised the water table here. This used to have a lot of what looks like either white pine, hemlock, or even maybe some spruce growing out in the bog area of this wetland. But it, you know, if you raise the water table a few feet, the trees drown. They can't, most trees can't withstand roots wet year round. Even ones that grow in swamps tend to grow on the hummocks, like the red maple and the black gum and the Atlantic white cedar and the black spruce. The tamarack can't withstand soaking wet roots year round, and if any activity, either natural or man-made, what raises the water table more than a foot or two, this is what you end up seeing. But starting to see some hemlocks growing on these little clumps out there where the logs were. So you know, all is not lost. Eventually the forest, you know, this will fill in with mud and with leaves, and the forest will return. It's just a little bit of a beaver dam within view here. There's a big old pine that he did fell. You can see the growth rings on there. I believe that was a white pine. And yes, the beaver dam is here. It looks fairly new. A little hard to see. The contrast is, it's a little too bright right here to see the contrast between the beaver dam and the water and the vegetation. But there is a beaver dam here. The water is flowing from right to left, and there's a small outlet of this wetland that was probably already here before the beavers got here, and they've just raised it up a little higher. So we're almost to Breakneck Pond. Got one more ridge to climb over, and we'll be at a pond that's got enough water that I can dunk my hat and cool off on a day that's getting increasingly summer-like. And as we reach the end of the blue and orange ridge trail, We're greeted to the sound and sight of rushing water. This is the north end of Breakneck Pond, and it drains to the north and heads into Massachusetts, and eventually that water will find its way back down the Quinnebog River into Connecticut again. Taking the roundabout route. I'm going to take a little break here and dunk my hat in the water. Boy, still finding more of these pink lady slippers. Beautiful. And these are pretty much in full bloom. Let's look at the other side. There we go. And my plan is to take this blue and red trail along the west side of Breakneck Pond, and eventually there's some service roads, some Jeep roads that lead back to Bigelow Pond. We will take those if I need to move a little faster on the way out. I've still got plenty of time, but I am stopping a lot to look around and make these videos. But there's several places in this park where the single track, somewhat rocky trails can be paralleled by an old woods road that sometimes is rutted, but you can make better time on them. Probably easier to snowshoe and cross-country ski in the winter time. Let's continue on.